Hi, this is Jay Hummel. Welcome to the deep dive in collaboration with Investopedia. We've been getting a lot of questions recently about what's going on with the SEC, FINRA. There's a lot of risk out there in the marketplace, and I can't think of a better guest that we could have today. Good friend of mine, Conor Anderson from AdvisorAssist, who thinks about this day and night. You would think this is going to be a boring show because we're talking about compliance, but what AdvisorAssist does on the business side is amazing as well. And so, Conor, thank you for taking the time to join us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jay. And well, you might think it's boring, right? A lot of things that we talk about from a compliance, regulatory, and risk management side really, I think, helps our clients. And when they get off calls with us, they're thinking, "Well, was that a compliance call, or is that actually a business management call?" So I'm happy to be here and talk about the things that we're dealing with day in and day out.
Yeah, so give the viewers just a quick background on you and what you guys do at AdvisorAssist.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've basically serviced the independent RIA space, and we specialize really in regulatory compliance, risk management for our 750 RIAs that we work with. And that can be anywhere between dealing with regulators, dealing with the clients issues, dealing with third-party vendors that our RIA clients utilize, and asking us, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are the things I need to be thinking about when I'm utilizing this third-party vendor? And my team here, we're really kind of dedicated to understanding the operations of our clients, and finding ways to help them kind of streamline their approach and do it better and easier and much more efficient, all while complying with regulatory standards that are out there that are ever changing.
So one of the questions I get a lot is UCE, and I think that's why the value of AdvisorAssist is you're constantly going through the audit process with your firms, right? I mean, I don't know how many audits you go through on a weekly basis, but I'm sure it's a lot. What are some of the main topics you're seeing the SEC focused on today as it relates to the audit process?
Yeah, absolutely. So on an average basis, probably year in and year out, we're probably close to 75 to 100 plus advisory exams, or exams that our advisory clients go through. And we're sitting kind of side by side with them, helping them through the actual process, right? Because at the end of the day, the regulators kind of change on what they're looking for from exam to exam. And we're trying to find themes and trends to be able to kind of get ahead of those issues, right? So we all see in the news and the press that over 2023, 2024, there was a massive push from the regulators looking at marketing and client communication processes, right, and looking for deficiencies, especially as it relates to the new marketing rule that was put out in 22. Right, so certainly a lot of the exams were looking at those types of issues. How are firms utilizing their marketing communications process? What was the content that they were putting out? What were the controls that they had in place? Right, so you couple that with the off-channel communications, right? So advisors, they certainly want to utilize many means of communicating with their clients, right? So text messaging became a big hot topic with the regulators, right? So advisors were, a lot of their clients were friends of theirs, right? And they're texting their advisors, and the clients were texting back. So at the end of the day, the regulators were looking at, how are these RIAs maintaining those records for supervision? So off-channel communications was a big one, and for that area, there's been a ton of providers out there that are kind of rallying their bandwagon to figure out how can they create a solve for that. Right, so those are really the big areas. Outside of that, it's a constant with the regulators as it relates to fiduciary duty and looking for conflicts of interest. Have they been disclosed properly? Have they been supervised appropriately and vetted internally? So that's always a constant, right? It's the primary goal that the SEC is looking out there, is looking for that fiduciary duty component.
So would you say the top three topics in today's marketplace, right? The viewers of this who own, because it's mostly RAs who watch this show, and home office folks, which is, to me, it's conflict of interest disclosures. It is email and text retention. Probably are the top. and then I want to get to cyber with you.
Absolutely.
I want to
Absolutely.
get to cyber with you next. But
Yeah.
if you think of when you think of the audits, my bet is those are the three.
Yeah,
Am I
absolutely.
right on
Now,
that?
you're spot on, right? Because at the end of the day, they're looking for investor protection, right? And that can mean many different things, and all the way down to the investment selections that the advisors are choosing for managing client assets, right? So making sure that there's appropriate due diligence from a cost management perspective and conflict with the securities that they're utilizing, right? So it kind of all tied up in that with a big bow around fiduciary duty, and certainly fee components, the advisory fees, how are they calculating them? Are they overcharging clients? Are they being consistent with their billing process? All of that is wrapped into that fiduciary duty perspective. So yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And then, as you said, the last component into this, what we're getting our arms around is the cyber piece.
Yeah, I mean, I literally yesterday was with two advisors who they were new people I met, and the number one question once they understood that we live in the wealth management space was, how do we think about cybersecurity? In two ways. How do we think about protecting ourselves and our clients? And two, how do we make sure that the SEC is okay with what we're doing from a cybersecurity standpoint? So I would love your perspective on that.
Absolutely, and again, you're spot on with this. These are the questions that I think the regulators are looking at. Right, there's new rules that they're putting out. Cyber rule, the enhancement of Reg SP that's in place. All these items certainly are coming and bubbling up. Right, to the extent that we at AdvisorAssist have thought, well, how are we going to better service our clients and put it out there? So we've launched in connection with a subject matter expert in this space, advisor defense, right? And we're really looking from a consultative perspective. How can we help educate, train, create a risk assessment process and model to allow advisors to really kind of look at this space, right? Because what I'm learning is as kind of somebody that's really an infant in this space on the cyber side, is that you can have all the protections and systems set up and that you want or can have. Human intervention and human failure is still a primary item, right? So the money movement requests that come in, I mean, these as we hear, these criminals are super good at what they do, right?
Yeah.
And they can mask the communications to look like it's a legitimate communication from a client. And if advisors and the staff that work for the advisors are not trained appropriately, they're not supervised appropriately, that's where the issues rise. So these are all the issues that we think the SEC has been asking about, certainly over the last couple of years since they went out with the cyber sweep exam process in 23, and the rules that are coming out that they're looking to implement in the near future around cyber certainly get to that. And that's where advisor defense really kind of comes in with our Phil Caniglio, who's running it on our side. He's extremely good at providing service and consultative guidance to those advisors.
Man, it's scary as hell. I mean, obviously I knew, but literally yesterday, somebody hacked my dad's phone. My dad's 77 years old. Got a text from my dad, hey, I need you to wire me some money because we're having an issue. I knew he didn't have an issue. So I knew it was fake. But so I called him to let him know that his phone had been hacked. But that's how deep these cyber hackers are going. And if you're an RIA moving money on clients' behalf relative to custodian relationships and all this stuff, I mean, it's a pretty scary world out there as it relates to how do you comply with that?
It is, and the stories that we hear from our advisory clients for their clients, generally around financial exploitation of elderly, individuals there, educating them as well on what to look for to help protect them, right? So advisors really need to look at their own house, but then also to be the advisor to those clients to help them in this space, because that's really where the big issue comes in, where an elderly individual is contacted by someone in a foreign country that is, asking for money for certain reasons, and at the end of the day, they're, it's a nefarious activity there. So certainly.
It's scary. We literally had a family friend end up with a crypto issue and got hacked a few weeks ago, and it's a scary place. But that's what you guys do. That's why you guys do what you do. And again, that's why I joke. This is not a boring compliance podcast.
Absolutely.
The last question I always ask guests, and you don't have to answer this from a compliance standpoint if you don't want. You see a lot of stuff, which is why I respect you and why you and I are friends. You see a lot of stuff. What's the one thing you think the industry, being wealth management, isn't paying enough attention to? What's not being talked about? What are people not paying attention to that you think they should be?
Yeah, I think, predominantly in our space, and not to necessarily tie it back to compliance, right? But at the end of the day, the advisors that we work with, obviously they're running a small business, right? They're looking at best way to manage their businesses, keeping costs down. So, we've certainly seen a trend of outsourcing. Right. And whether it be outsourcing compliance, whether it be outsourcing billing, whether it be outsourcing any component, marketing, communications, right? There's a ton of providers out there that are extremely good at what they do. The advisors aren't paying, in our opinion, enough attention for doing due diligence on those providers. Understanding truly what are you doing for me? And from a compliance perspective, right, we're always looking at this saying, yeah, sure, we can be your outsourced CCO. Right, we can be that name CCO. Take that item off of your plate. At the end of the day, when we do this in a partner manner. Right, we aren't just doing this so that we take on the responsibility from a regulatory perspective, but we're actually doing this to make sure that with our expertise we can help you manage risk. But in order to be able to do that, you need a partner that's actually getting in there and understanding your business with you, side by side, right? And from an outsource perspective, a lot of clients of ours that are asking for this think that they just want the compliance responsibility off their plate, right? At the end of the day, we don't think that's an appropriate thing. We don't think advisors are thinking about that enough. You're going to be still in that seat from a responsibility perspective because you're the owner. At the end of the day, you're the control person. You manage the day in and day out operations of the firm. And if you don't have a partner there from a compliance perspective that's helping you through that process and helping you uncover those stones where there's risk that lies, there's a bigger ticket item there.
Man, that's a great answer. So how do people find you, Conor, if listeners want to do business with AdvisorAssist? How do they find AdvisorAssist? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Jay. And, at the end of the day, we have a website, AdvisorAssist.com. We've got a pretty significant LinkedIn profile that we're putting content out there. Certainly, we want to be the provider out there in this space that's talking about the things that we see from an industry perspective and not just compliance, right? So our LinkedIn handle, AdvisorAssist, certainly you can find us that way. And, call any one of us, right? We don't necessarily have a sales department, right? Because all of my partners we're geared towards helping anyone and everyone, depending on whether or not you are a startup RIA where you've got a couple of client assets, or you're a 25 billion plus RIA with 100 headcount, right? We scan the entire industry here, and our services are really set up to allow for the servicing of a multitude of clients and the complexity that this industry faces or brings to advisors. So this has been great, and want to thank you, Jay.
Oh, thanks for coming on, Conor. I know you're busy. I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully you'll come back.
Oh, love to be back and love talking with you. And I know we've only scratched the surface on a number of things, right, that we see in this industry for advisors. We didn't even talk about M&A and the risk to M&A.
We could do a 3-hour podcast, but I don't think anybody would listen. I'm not Joe Rogan, so it's kind of like so.
Right.
Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks for listening, watching. We'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.